Hi, HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today, we have a special guest. We're joined by Jose Costa. Jose is the CEO of North America at GrandVision. Jose, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic. Well, great to have you involved. Jose, for our listeners, fill in the gaps. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
Absolutely. I'm originally from Venezuela. I'm the eldest son of an Spanish immigrant and an Italian immigrant who met in Venezuela. And the dream was for me to come to the US, study, and then go back and take over the family business. My father owned about 7 marketing and advertising companies in Venezuela. And in the early 2000s, I came for graduate school in the US. And the idea was for me to get my degree, go back and take over my family's business. But Venezuela went through a lot of changes politically and socially, economically, and I never went back. That was 16 years ago. And in the last 16 years, I worked for Yum Brands with KFC. I had my own marketing and advertising agency, worked for Burger King, then spent 5 years in the automotive space. And my last year at GrandVision running optical retail here in the US and Canada.
Amazing. What a journey to where you are now then. So how did you, just out of curiosity, how did you sort of get from where you were now to, the CEO? Was that always your goal, or is that just how the career panned out? Just out of curiosity.
No, I grew up in the advertising world. So my first 10 years of my career, I was on the advertising agency side. Mm-hmm. And then with graduate school, I had the opportunity to switch to the client side. I always knew I wanted to be a CEO, and I grew up through marketing. So earlier in my career after graduate school, I started in brand management for KFC. And KFC hires a lot of people from Procter & Gamble and Unilever, and they have a very good marketing framework. So it's a very good training ground for marketers. I did that for about 3 years, and then I come from a family of entrepreneurs, so I wanted to have my own company I had it for 5 years. I had horrible timing. It was 2007, 2008.
Sure, yeah, must have.
So
yeah.
I grew fast. I hired 16 people, got a couple big accounts, and then I lost them and I had to fire everyone.
Wow.
5 years later, I got a call from Burger King to run 32 countries, all of Latin America and the Caribbean. And it was a great opportunity at a very early age. So I took on that challenge, and it was a much more senior, bigger scope, $2 billion business unit.
Just out of curiosity, what did you learn from the startup that you took into a large organization and vice versa?
Well, I have to say, I just finished writing a book. It's called Leading with Edge.
Oh, amazing.
And in that book, I'll send you a copy so you can read it. But in that book, I basically talk about my learnings, both at the agency and throughout my career. I would say that number one, it starts with gaining knowledge and sharing knowledge with your team. A lot of leaders feel the responsibility of having all the answers, and we don't. Mm-hmm. You need to surround yourself with the best team possible, a diverse team. I love hiring engineers and putting them in non-engineering roles, or a history major, or someone even that only has trade skills but not necessarily went to school, and a plethora of experiences. And then you see how the team succeeds, right? Also, I look for inquisitive minds, people that are continuously learning, reading, experiencing new things. Then it's about accountability and setting expectations. I follow a process called MBOs, Management by Objectives, and it's our report card. And it's a very simple process. I tell my team, when you're in school, everyone gets a grade. When you are in sports, you have the starters and the people on the bench. So in business, it should be the same. We need to keep score, and we need to know publicly how Chris is doing versus Jose. So once a week, once a month, once a quarter, we rank everyone in the company and we communicate openly that performance. And we work on individual performance plans so Chris can get better. And it's a binary polarizing situation because if once we put the light on Chris, Chris can do two things. Chris can either step up his game and change, or Chris can say, this is too hard for me. I don't like the scrutiny. I don't like the pressure. I'm going to leave. The third component for me is trust and verify. I give the team a lot of autonomy, but I want to continuously trust and verify that they're doing what they're asked to do. And last but not least, to me, is about dreaming big and working hard. That's our mantra at Burger King, at Driven Brands, and now at GrandVision. I've taken that with me, and I borrowed that idea from Giorgio Paolo Lehmann. Giorgio Paolo Lehmann was the founder of 3G Capital. They are the ones that bought Kraft, Heinz, Burger King, Anheuser-Busch. Mm-hmm. And I saw him speak once, and he said, it takes the same amount of effort. It will take you the same amount of effort to dream small as it does to dream big.
Interesting.
So why don't you just dream as big as you can? And then it's about working hard, waking up early and working harder than everyone. Not about being smart, not about having 20 degrees, about working as hard as you can to achieve that dream. Long-winded answer, but I think those
no,
are
fascinating. You're giving me, as a founder of this business, you're giving me a lot to think about myself. And it's funny you say that, because I was having a conversation with my business partner recently about hiring, and one of the key things we are looking for is people that are inquisitive. They naturally have that hunger to learn and develop themselves. You don't have to push them to do that. They naturally want to do that. And I think it's very important. I think I took that for granted myself, and also my business partner. We're both the same. We're voracious learners. We love learning and learning, grabbing into new things and jumping into uncomfortable situations and learning how to, that's exciting for us. Whereas most people aren't like that at all, and they don't like that. So we're having to learn that the hard way. Which is
absolutely. And it's critical to look for those skills and traits during the interview process.
Yeah.
I interviewed at least 10, 15 people a week, and I'm looking for exactly what you're describing.
How do you identify that in your recruitment project? What kind of questions do you ask, just out of curiosity?
So what do they do? What's their routine around learning and developing themselves? And what was the last book they read? Have they visited a museum? Who they have lunch with? Here in the US, it's amazing. People have lunch at their desk by themselves because they think they're going to be more productive. And I continuously push them to take those 30 minutes and go meet someone in another department. Imagine how powerful it would be if Chris had lunch Monday with IT, Tuesday with legal, Wednesday with operations, Thursday with marketing, and Friday with finance. You met 5 people that you didn't know before. You could ask questions about their departments and so on. So I try to get at that. I try to get their career path. Did they play sports? Were they involved in community events? Mm-hmm. Do they have kids? Because as they have kids, you want to instill that knowledge in your children, right? So do you go to museums with your kids? How do you share knowledge with your family, right? Mm-hmm. It's not only at work. You can show me that you're inquisitive in many aspects of your life.
Yeah, nice. And that's where they can give you concrete examples as well. And it's very interesting. I always look for the sports one as well, where people, I think from a sales perspective, when I was a sales director, my most successful sales guys, a lot of them had a sporting background. So they had the competitiveness that came along with that, right? And they had less fear of failure because they were used to failing. You know, they lost football games, they lost, you know, they had a bad training day, right? You know, and also military. You know, some of the best sales guys I had were military, so like they weren't going to get stressed out on a phone call. They weren't going to be afraid of getting rejection or no when there was a medic in the army, right? So it's very interesting. I wish I knew that earlier in my career, because I think a lot of those people, I got quite lucky, I'll be honest, in our recruitment process. But now I've kind of defined a set of questions that I ask and look for throughout our interviews to help identify those individuals as well. And I love the point you made about meeting with other departments, because I think that's where the innovation comes from, when you can actually have all people that, like for example, myself in sales, networking with the marketing, operations, production, IT, building those relationships. That's where some of the most innovative ideas come from, by cross-pollinating that talent with each other.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's an informal conversation. That's why we don't have offices in our headquarters. We knock down all the walls and all the teams sit together. So if I have a question, I just turn around and ask you, versus me closing the door to my office and hiding, right?
Yeah.
It's people think that you need to hire an innovation consultancy or spend thousands and millions of dollars, and you don't.
If you bring together a diverse group, then it will happen naturally, right? For people listening that aren't aware of GrandVision, could you give us just a brief overview of what you guys do?
Absolutely. So GrandVision is the largest optical retailer in the world. We have 7,000 stores in 45 countries. And basically, we are in the intersection of healthcare and retail. All of our stores have a doctor. We do eye exams. And then we sell them contact lenses, prescription glasses, or sunglasses.
Amazing. And it's such an exciting company for as well. I still love it. So for where you are now, obviously a year into the business, right? Is that correct?
That's right.
What
Yes.
what really occupies your mind on a day-to-day basis?
Growing the company, having the right team in place. To me, our head of HR, Lisa Fisher, is my right-hand person, who's helping me build the right team, the right culture, and execute against the objectives that we have as a company. GrandVision bought 4Eyes, which was a regional retailer in the US, as an entry point to the North America market. And it is our responsibility now to turn around the business and grow it from about 120 stores domestically to 1,000 in the next 3 to 5 years.
Wow. Well, it's definitely going to require a strong collaboration with HR to achieve that.
It's all about the hiring the right talent.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. So that leads us quite nicely on to the next question. So what do you look for then in your HR function as a CEO?
A very cerebral partner that can build bridges with other departments. Our head of HR has done a phenomenal job building a relationship with each department head, and then assessing their talent needs and recruiting to fill those needs, or promoting from within to fill those needs. Or unfortunately, every 6 months, after we have 2 performance reviews, we do them every quarter, and then we make tough decisions every 6 months, where the underperformers basically have to exit the organization. So to me, is the most important function in the entire company, because at the end of the day, we are our people and we want to hire the best talent possible. Which brings me to our culture and our 5 key values. Number 1 is meritocracy. The example I gave earlier around being promoted based on merit. So that's what the performance reviews allow us to do, and the transparency of the whole process. So if I know Chris is outperforming, we look at a 4-box matrix where we have high potential and high performance. And if you are in the top right-hand quadrant, you are one of our rock stars. We want to promote you. We want to give you more salary, more title, more responsibility. If you're in the bottom right, you have high performance, but you don't have high potential. You may be a forensic accountant. You may be a very specialized IT person. We need you as part of our team. We want to keep you there in that box if you want to be in that box forever, right? Then the top left, you have a lot of high potential, but you haven't shown anyone that you can perform. Maybe you're new to the company, maybe you're new to that department. So we're going to work with you to move you from high potential to high performance. Last but not least, the bottom left, we talk about, if you spend 2 performance reviews in that bottom left quadrant, which is low potential, low performance, then we need to have a conversation about what to do with you in the organization, right? And that's where HR becomes a critical partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Of course.
The other values we have is ownership. We look for individuals that think and act like owners around the company resources, around decision making. Would you truly invest those marketing dollars in that campaign without knowing what the return will be? And as you hire people that have an entrepreneurial background, that they own their own company, then you see how people think like owners, right? We have another value that's very important for us is around recognition. So we framed recognition around superhero service. And if we provide great service, then our teams get recognized. And we have basically superhero figurines that we give out.
Oh, really?
They
cool.
go out with $500 in cash.
Nice.
And a thank you card recognizing the individual for going beyond the call of duty. We have integrity, which is self-explanatory, and the last one is fun. And it's also where superheroes come into play. We want to have fun at work.
I love all of those points that you made. One that stood out to me, which is very interesting now being a business owner, and also something my CEO used to say in a previous job is, and you mentioned about entrepreneurs that work in your organization now, is that they say to me, Chris, when you're hiring, would you hire this if it was your own money? Or would you invest in that technology if it was your own money? And that stuck with me throughout my career. Every time I made a decision, I always used to think, if this was my hard-earned money, would I actually invest it in this individual or in this process or in this technology or this solution? And many of my decisions were very quickly made for me, just based on that, right? And now, obviously, running my own business is of course my own money, and of course, so it's very interesting when you have people like, because a lot of the times, and I definitely saw a lot of the managers or leaders in the business that didn't act with that rationale at all. It was just sort of we'll do it and see if it works, or we'll invest in it and see if it works, and that's not sustainable.
And sometimes the bigger the organization, the older the organization, there's a lot of bureaucracy and complacency. And you see that they make so many mistakes. They keep investing money without thinking like owners. And in more nimble, more entrepreneurial organizations, you don't see that. So we try to move away from using titles, using offices, using long approval processes, long PowerPoints, long meetings, and just having more of an entrepreneurial mindset that allows you to be more nimble and forces people to think like owners.
Yeah. How do you, obviously you're encouraging it with the environment, which is fantastic. And the processes that you have in place are also encouraging this behavior. How else are you doing that?
So we use four simple terms. Every time we have a meeting, we try to keep our meetings very short. Mm-hmm. And we say, what's the purpose of this meeting up front? Is it to inform? Is it to explore? Is it to debate? Or is it to decide? And once we set up front what the purpose of the meeting is, we know exactly what we want to accomplish. We want to have those meetings as brief as possible. We are leveraging Skype and text messaging more than email. We knock down the walls, trying to get away from titles, remove the long approval processes. So all those things are helping build a great culture.
How does that work when you're trying to attract talent, when you don't have those particular traditional job titles or processes in place that they normally come to expect if they move from a Unilever or a P&G or a Yum Brands into an organization like your own? How have you found that people find that transition coming over from a traditional organization to something like yourself, which is very much progressive?
Right. Well, you would be surprised. Many times in those organizations, people feel trapped or they've been in that company or in that job for a long time with the same title, and they haven't had the opportunity to do more. So we offer them more flexibility, more liberty, more autonomy to do what they need to do. I think it's more attractive also for millennials and younger talent, because as you know, they get bored pretty quickly. And in a nimble environment, you always keep them challenged. We do still have titles in the offer letters and in your business card. We just don't encourage.
I'm with you. I understand.
If you go visit stores with me, let's say you and I go to Chicago and visit stores. You will never hear me say I'm the CEO of the company, ever. I always say, oh, I work in operations or I work in marketing. And intentionally, the way you dress, what car you drive, what cues you're communicating continuously. Are you a top-down type of leader, a bottom-up type of leader?
It also makes you more approachable as
Absolutely.
well. If I look back when I started my career, you wouldn't ever walk into the CEO's office
Right.
or just approach them, and because they weren't approachable, and the environment wasn't designed in that way. I think maybe 2 years into my job did I have a conversation with my CEO.
Yes.
Which seems crazy. It seems crazy, right? And I actually was one of the top sales guys globally in the company, but just never had that. I always had a barrier. My director would communicate on my behalf to the CEO, and that was the process. So it definitely come a long way.
But I would have to say that I think in many cases, that's a self-inflicted barrier, because many leaders, they want to give back. And if they see a young talent that's hungry, aggressive, smart like Chris, they want to help them out. And it happened to me when I was at Young. I was a very junior assistant brand manager, one of hundreds in marketing. And one day I emailed the assistant of the CEO and I said, can I have lunch with him? And he said yes. So I think
you are right. You are 1000% right, because now Andy, who was my former, I know him very well, and I met him for lunch a few weeks ago, and he's extremely approachable and an incredible guy. I just had this mental barrier in my head that this is not how things work, and I shouldn't do that because I may upset my sales director, or I don't, this is the hierarchy. This is where I am, and going to have a conversation here, would be a step too far. So it was really a cultural thing, and also my own mental block. But I wish I knew what I knew now. Well, on that point then, when you work with your HR team, they've got so much responsibility, but in your mind, where should HR spend most of its time in the organization and resources?
I think building the culture all day long. If you have the right culture driving the right behaviors, then you get the results. So treating people right, rewarding them, making them feel special and recognized. So I would say number one, culture; number two, performance management. Those are their top two priorities.
And how would you measure the success of culture? Because it's this word that everyone loves to throw out there. Everyone loves to say culture. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you in terms of what does a successful culture look like?
So we have a talent management platform that is tied to our 5 values. And we do a quarterly survey where we measure employee engagement. A lot of it has to do with the engagement of the workforce, right? So we go back to the performance management piece is very easy to measure because it's KPIs and it's black or white.
Yeah, very simple. Yeah.
But on the culture piece is more through qualitative research, our survey that we use on ongoing conversations, Glassdoor reviews, reviews that we can find online about our management team, our company, the CEO.
Is that how you would measure the success of HR then? Because I think this is something which is very interesting of, how do you measure the success of your HR?
To me, I do mystery shopper visits. I go myself unannounced. I'll book a ticket and go travel to Philadelphia, New Jersey, or Boston and show up without no one knowing.
Wow.
And if I see the culture alive in the store, then my HR team is doing a good job. Mystery calls, you don't necessarily have to fly. You can call and try to make an appointment, or you can call and call the 1-800 number and say you have a complaint and see what they do.
That must be so interesting from a CEO perspective to be able to do that, and also just to walk in, unannounced and see that, because I think that's the best way for you to get the authentic inside look, right? Otherwise, they will be prepared for your arrival. Everything will look exactly how they think it should look for you and dressed up. What are some of the experiences you've had when doing that, just out of curiosity?
Well, the best experience of my life, I had the opportunity to do Undercover Boss, the TV show.
Oh, you did?
I did when I was
a young brand.
Mako.
Oh, Mako. Okay. Oh, Mako. Okay.
Yes, when I was CEO of Mako,
Wow.
I did it, and it was a fantastic experience because it's non-scripted, it's non-rehearsed,
Hmm.
and you literally show up and do the work of the frontline team members, and it is harder than the work of the CEO.
Yeah.
And that taught me the importance of empathy, of not taking for granted a title or a position, um, and connecting with the front line, right? So every time I visited body shops in my previous life, or I visit doctors' offices now, I always start with the lowest level ranking associate and ask questions about the culture. What can we do better? What can we change? What happened if we stop XYZ? Are our benefits good? There's so many things you can learn and ask in 5, 10, 20 minutes.
And those are the people that are the closest to your customers. And those are the people that, day in, day out are interacting with your customers. There's no better source of knowledge, right? And
Right.
as the owner of the business now, looking back, because I kind of started at the very bottom as a sales executive in this world, I've seen what that looks like, and I have a sort of a newfound respect for my employees that I hire in those lower level positions. I've been there and done it, and obviously climbed my way up in the industry to where I am now, where I am sort of managing the business. And I think I wouldn't be able to do what I do now without knowing or being in that position or understanding what they do on a daily basis. And
Absolutely.
every single week we have a meeting where I ask my team, what is the feedback from the customers? What can we do better? And some of the best insights and innovations in our company have come from those conversations. So I definitely don't take those for granted. What an amazing experience. I'm a big fan of the show, by the way. I actually watch that all the time. Whenever it comes on the TV, it somehow just grabs you and you just end up watching it. And I'm seeing like 2 hours later, I'm still watching, because it's all on like
Yes.
normally repeats, right? And I'm sitting there with my wife and I'm like, we've just watched like 3 hours of the show.
Yes.
So yeah, very, very interesting experience. Of course, there's the glamorous side of the role, but then also, as you mentioned earlier, there's the tough side where you do have to let go of people. Just out of curiosity, have you ever had to let go of a senior HR leader in your time? If so, what led to that decision?
When I joined GrandVision, the 4 months later, the HR leader resigned. I didn't have to let her go. She decided to leave. And I think the reason she decided to leave was because of the changing culture, the changing accountability, the pressure that I put on HR to be the number one partner in the management team. And she basically felt that it wasn't the right alignment, so she left. I haven't had through the years to fire any HR leader. I've had the privilege and the I guess the luck of
Yeah.
inheriting very good HR talent.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like the one I hired for GrandVision, I had to wait about 4 or 5 months for her to finish her previous role before she could come join us. So being patient until you can find the right HR leader is critical, because GrandVision North America couldn't be where we are today if I would have rushed my HR decision.
It's essential. It's such an important, especially with the scale that you guys are going to be growing at over the next 3 to 5 years. That's the most essential hire in many in to do that. Otherwise, when you was looking at hiring a CEO, a senior HR leader, what was these skills and attributes, but both soft and hard skill, that you were looking for?
Someone cerebral, someone who had done all the different aspects of the HR role, from total rewards, compensation, performance management, recruiting. Someone personable, someone with a lot of experience in big companies, someone that knew multi-unit retailing and franchising and working with small business owners, someone with diversity. And then last but not least, I picked up the phone and called one of my mentors.
Mm-hmm.
He was the chief human resource officer at General Motors globally. He just stepped down earlier this year, Jose Tomas. And I said, Jose, I'm looking for this type of HR leader. and he gave me one name, and that was Lisa Fisher.
Wow.
So,
wow. Very interesting. If you don't mind me asking, how did that first reach out to her go?
good, because I use Jose's name.
You got a referral, right? The best lead is a referral lead, right?
Yes, yes.
Works out very well. Fantastic. So this leads us quite nicely, Jose, onto the quick fire round, where I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and you have no longer than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers. Are you ready?
No pressure.
What was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming the CEO of an organization?
Probably my age. I was very young. I'm 41 years old right now, and I was president at 33, and some boards of directors feel that you need to be older to have a bigger title.
Mm-hmm. How did you overcome that, despite just proving the fact that you earned the position and have the experience? How did you overcome that yourself?
You prove it with great results.
Yeah.
Results trump everything. So at Burger King, I had almost 30 months of positive growth. We almost doubled EBITDA. At Driven Brands, we had 62 months of growth. And with 62 months of growth, you cannot argue. We had 5 years of consecutive growth. So those things,
the results don't lie, right? So
right.
And it's funny because not to your extent, but I was also the youngest director in my last organization. I started at 17 years old, and before I was even 20, I was managing the team, and I had people on my team that were double my age, literally, that I was managing, which is quite tough. And many times it was hard for me. Once I earned their respect through results, then it worked very well. But initially, can you imagine me walking into an interview room as a 20-year-old interviewing someone who's 40 plus? There was a big shock on their face, and this is going to be my boss, which happened a lot. Trust me, it happened a lot. But once they came into the business and saw, I was very much a leader. Of leading by example was always my approach. So when it came to sales, I was always in the trenches with the team, and I think that was the way I always proved to those employees of why I deserve to be in that position. So very interesting. And I think many times it doesn't seem that you have this problem, but many times people are held back themselves for those reasons, saying, I was shocked that I was in that position, and I had a lot of doubt in myself of, am I ready? I'm not even 20 years old yet. Am I ready to be a leader? Clearly you understood that you were ready because you've been there, done it, and had the results as well. But a lot of people tend to hold themselves back from these opportunities.
Right. Yes, I agree. Absolutely.
What's the best piece of business advice that you've ever received?
Dream big and work hard. Even if you think no one is watching, there's always someone watching. It has happened to me in many positions that I've had. When I was at Young Brands, Jose Tomas, the chief people officer at Burger King, interviewed me, and he said, "Thank you for coming. I like you a lot, but I'm not going to hire you." 7 years later, he had saved my resume and my phone number, and he called me.
Wow.
And he said, "I have a job." And through the years, the same thing. Jonathan Fitzpatrick gave me the great opportunity to join him at Driven Brands and now at GrandVision. So even though you don't think someone's watching, there's always, either at the board level, your boss, a peer of your boss, there's always someone watching. So if you dream big and work hard, you'll get there.
What's one book that you would recommend to our audience, and why? Doesn't have to be HR related, of course, or multiple books if there's more than one that come to mind.
I love reading, and I think I've condensed my learnings in the one that I just finished writing. It took me 5 years. It's Leading with Edge. I love Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Mm-hmm.
Larry Bossidy, Execution is one of my favorites. Customer Mania by David Novak. He was one of my greatest inspirations. Those are some of my favorites. Probably those three.
Fantastic. Well, I'll definitely link them in the description for everyone. And where can we find your book? Is it available now? Is it available?
No, it comes out.
When's it out?
End of September, and
Okay.
it will be on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we'll certainly link that up for everyone so they can grab a
Thank you.
copy as well. And I'm interested to read it myself. What's one internet resource that you use to keep up to date with current events or network and learn?
I use the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Harvard Business Review, Advertising Age, Business Insider,
Mm-hmm.
Fast Company. Those are the main ones I use. And I'm continuously, every morning, I take an hour from my day to read news every morning. All those websites and a couple others that I like to read.
Yeah, well, that's more than enough to keep you informed in an hour. There's a lot of information to consume there. So very, very, very interesting. And last question: what's one thing about your business that most excites you today?
The opportunity to grow is such a traditional, slow industry where you still need an eye exam to get your prescription glasses, and there's a lot of disruptive technology with online exams and telemedicine that will just change the way we do business.
Yeah, I can only imagine the opportunity you have now, because I'm assuming that's already available, right? In order to, you have your subscription now it's online, so you can order new glasses, etc., all online and make it a seamless process.
Yeah. Yes, it's there. It's not perfect. It continues to evolve. If you have a high prescription, more than 5 points, you still need a full comprehensive eye exam. If you want a 3D imaging of your retina, you still need to go to a store.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there's still components depending on how bad your sight is that you still need to go to an actual doctor.
Well, to be honest, just the fact that my wife gets her lenses, shipped to her every single month. Sometimes it comes and I'm like, that's a huge innovation on its own.
Absolutely.
that you have it delivered to the door, right?
Yes.
So that alone is quite a big step from where we used to be.
Yes.
Come a long way since that. Well, look, Jose, you've given us some great actionable advice, and I think we could talk about this for hours. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. Before we part ways, give our leaders one parting piece of guidance that you could give to HR leaders out there from a CEO perspective, and also the best way to get in contact with you if any of our members wish to reach out to you.
Absolutely. I think the best piece of advice that I can give anyone listening to us is you own your balance and you own your career. If you think the HR department or your boss owns your career, you're wrong. You need to manage your career. You need to be inquisitive. You need to have a plan. I want to be here in 3 years, in 5, in 10, and own what are the steps you need to take to own that. And at the same time, balancing your life and your career at the same time. I have 3 small children, 6, 4, and 2. And if I blink, they'll be gone in college and I'll miss it. So I need to find those windows of opportunity to be home for dinner, to be at a soccer game on Saturday, and so on. So those are my 2 pieces of advice. If you want to get a hold of me, I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can email me. My work email is jcosta@4eyes.com. And I'm happy to help and pay it forward as much as I can.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again. Honestly, it's been an amazing conversation. I appreciate you coming on, joining us. For everyone listening, guys, head over to hrleaders.com. There you'll find the show notes from the episode, everything we're talking about. Links to everything that Jose's mentioned will be in the description for you, including this book will be updated into that in September. So we'll include that for everyone. Thanks again for sharing your experience with our listeners, and I wish you all the best until we next speak.
Thank you so much. You too. Take care.